Good afternoon and welcome to the latest in our series of live career webinars brought to you by HOP. So HOP is the Hertfordshire Opportunities Portal. It is a website and a resource that we have every young person in school in and around Hertfordshire is using, because it contains a wealth of information about various careers choices that you might make or might be interested to find out more about. So this webinar is one of, I think, about 60 that we've recorded over the last couple of years. So I would encourage you, if you haven't already gone to it, have a look at our virtual encounter site. You may well find out there's some other ones in there that you or a friend may be interested in. So the purpose of today's webinar is to keep you informed and to inspire you about careers in culinary. So that is careers as a chef. I've got two experts with me today who have got an incredible amount of knowledge and experience in the industry, and they will be able to share some of their experiences with you over the next hour or so. This webinar is being recorded, so if you can't stay through to the end of it, you will be able to watch it back on our Hop Into YouTube channel. Equally, if you watch it and you think that one of your friends or a family member would also benefit from watching it, then you can share it and you can tell them to go back and have a look at it as well. So I would encourage you to do that. The other thing that I'd encourage you to do, so just to reassure you, we can't see or hear any of you, but you can interact with our panel. So you can ask our panelists some questions. You don't have to speak. You can type that in via the chat box, which on your dashboard on front of you, you should see that there is a chat tab. So if you open that chat tab up, it opens up a little text box. And within the text box, you can type your question. That will only be visible to me, and then I will direct it through to whichever of our panelists we've got. Now, just to confuse matters for you today, both of my panelists are called Lee. I am reassured that's not a prerequisite to become a chef. So without any further ado, let me hand over to them in turn to introduce themselves. So first of all, if I could start with Lee Maycock. Good afternoon, thanks for joining us.
Absolute pleasure.
Thank you. So Lee, just tell everyone a little bit about your background and what you're doing now.
Well, at the moment, we're in the process of managing a cookery school at Chewinbury Farm. We've only been open since August, so it's still early days, which is on a beautiful 700-acre estate just outside Hertford.
Fantastic, thank you. And Lee, I think very interested for you just to tell everyone about your background, because I think one particular aspect of your background is particularly topical with the World Cup tournament starting on Sunday.
Yes, so previous to this World Cup, I worked on the Brazil World Cup and the South Africa World Cup, cooking for the team, obviously in pre-tournament and tournament for those two World Cups, which was, yeah, very interesting to say the least.
Sure, so there may well be some questions about that as we go on. Also introducing another Lee to us. So Lee Bridgen, good afternoon. Tell us a little bit about you, Lee.
Yeah, good afternoon. So thank you, Gareth. I work at Hertford Regional College as a curricular area manager. Areas that I oversee include hospitality and catering, as well as business and tourism. But fortunately, my background and passion, I trained as a chef when I was 16, spent 15 years in the industry before coming into teaching. So yeah, it really is my passion, food. So I look forward to sharing some details with you.
Sure, so we will cover a lot more about, I think, your previous careers and what you're doing now, and any tips or guidance that you can give to any of our aspiring chefs that are watching this session right now. So what I'd like to do is, and I'd say, just to remind you, if those of you that are watching this live at the moment, so it's Thursday afternoon, you can submit your own questions. I can see there's one coming already, which is fantastic. So if you do have any questions, do drop them in. So I think I said the chat box, but the questions tab is the one that will come directly through to me. So open that out, type it into the text box, that will come through to me. So first of all, well, I've used the phrases interchangeably already. So Lee Maycock, what do we mean by culinary careers, and what's the difference between careers in culinary and being a chef, or are they one and the same thing?
It's such a diverse industry. It goes off in various different ways. I mean, myself alone, I know that I sort of started in hotels and restaurants. I then moved into film and television, so cooking for actors. I then obviously went off and did worked in America for George Lucas on several different films. Then got into football. So again, a slightly different sort of more sports nutrition aspect. Then came back to London, ended up fine dining in the city. There's just everywhere you look, there's just a different avenue to go down. And they're all very diverse, which is great because you'll never get bored in this industry. There's always something, something else to do. There's always something else around the corner. So culinary, to answer your question, is such a wide spectrum.
Sure. So Lee Bridgen, you obviously work with a lot of young people at Hertford Regional College, and I should say that those of you watching this at the moment will be near other colleges in Hertfordshire, so Oakland, West Herts and North Herts, and they all offer fantastic courses as well. But typically, what sort of work will your students go into once they finish with you, Lee? Where might we find them cooking? And
yeah, so a lot of our students, when they finally graduate, pass through us, will go into different types of jobs. I mean, we've got quite a good partnership with Mullins, the local brewer, and they take a lot of our students on for work placements, where a lot of those turn into paid employment in the end for them as well. We've got other connections that we use, other companies which we might go and work for, local hotels. They don't all, I mean, the courses that we tend to offer are professional cookery courses, but the students don't always end up going out and being a chef. They might find that whilst training to be a chef, they like food and beverage service, or that they go into different forms of the industry through that. So yeah, like Lee said, it's so diverse, but it's a really good starting base for them, professional cookery.
sure. So I'm going to ask you a difficult question now, because you just both gone to pains to saying how diverse the industry and the role can be. But thinking about what's really enjoyable about being a chef, and then also perhaps what's slightly challenging about it that people may not realise. Lee Maycock, what are the most enjoyable aspects of the role, first of all?
I think once you get into whether it's a hotel or a restaurant or whatever it is you end up working, it's a very much a team effort. So you build some great relationships. You work with some great chefs and colleagues, and I think that relationship lasts forever, if that makes sense. So yeah, you meet some great people, like-minded people that are passionate about food and cooking, and as you go through life, or as you go through your career, you cross paths with those people, once, twice, three times, because I think with chefs, we're quite nomadic. So we like to go and do a year here and a year there and a year somewhere else to gain lots of experience. And by doing that, like I said, you then bump into people that you've worked with in the past, and you keep in touch with your friends and your colleagues, because you might be working somewhere that needs more staff, so you can reach out to your friends and colleagues to get them work, and vice versa. They can reach out to you when you're looking for your next move. So yeah, I think they're definitely some of the positives. You make some great friends, and they become sort of lifelong friends.
Sure. And then Lee Bridgen, same question for you. Let's think about the positives to start with.
Yeah.
What do you really enjoy about the career in the industry that you've worked in?
Yeah, first of all, I've just got to completely agree with what Lee says there. I still use people that I used to work with in the industry coming into the college to support our learners here. The camaraderie. I think it's having that skill that other people haven't got as well. You're learning off people all the time. It's not something that stands still. Hospitality and catering. You will learn something new. Things change, cooking methods, so there's always something new and exciting to get into. The way of cooking things changes, sometimes it goes full circle. There's just so much. You think about the ingredients that we've now got to use, that's moved on so much in the 30. There's always something exciting to get your teeth into with catering. And if you've got that passion and drive, there is just there's so much. It's hard to really explain in short what it is, but those are the things that really excite me about food. I think we stopped using cheaper cuts of meat because they weren't so fashionable. We're now using them again a lot more. braising, slow cooking, old-fashioned cooking methods, but they've really come back to the fore. And it's those skills that, you know, we're teaching learners, you know, to do things over 6 hours rather than, you know, rushing. Yeah, there's just so much, Gareth, I'm going to be honest with you.
Sure. Lee, let me just stay with you, because there's a question that came in registration for both of you about why you wanted to become a chef in the first place. So I think, Lee, for you, it was in the family, wasn't it? Something you grew up with?
Yeah, my dad was a chef. I mean, the story being, my dad went to school in Singapore, wasn't very good at doing the typical male subjects like woodwork, carpentry, got thrown out of classes and got sent to do cookery class. Made some bread rolls. On the bus back, everyone wanted to buy bread rolls, so my dad became a little bit of an entrepreneur. That's kind of where his passion grew, and then he just followed on from there, really. I'm going to be honest, I left school with very poor qualifications because I didn't try, so all try harder than I did. You know, back then there were very few options in what to do, but after seeing where my dad had gone with it, I kind of made that decision to kind of follow his path, and I'm kind of glad I did now, to be fair.
Sure. Well, look, the same question for you, Lee. What was your source of inspiration? Why did culinary appeal to you as a youngster?
I was working in a hotel while still at school, so it was what started as a sort of weekend and evening and summer holiday role, essentially washing up. And it was, strangely enough, it was whilst doing the washing up and the pots and pans were coming from the kitchen, and the chefs was encouraging you to taste things. So albeit they were going to be cleaned, you'd stick your finger in or grab a spoon and you'd taste things. And I think I can honestly say that's where it started for me. And very shortly after that, I spoke to the chef and said, rather than washing up, can I come in the kitchen and, you know, peel the veg or whatever the case may be, the menial task, but it just gets me out of the washing, it gets me into the kitchen. And that's where it started. And I never looked back since. I went from washing up into, you know, that sort of training role within the hotel. Then I started to work on a fish market. So I was preparing fish Thursday mornings before school, Saturday mornings, you know, every weekend. Anything that was food related, I was all over it. It was, yeah, and I was getting paid for it, which was lovely.
Yeah. So if it's when you were working in the hotel, I'm guessing you must have been sort of mid-teens by that point. But were you experimenting at home in the kitchen? Were you sort of knocking up meals and dinners for yourself and your family at the time?
Yeah, I did. I think once that triggered the inspiration, yeah. And what I sort of tended to do at home was more savory and not sweet, if that makes sense. So a lot of chefs go one way or the other. So you either sort of, you're quite meticulous and you like weighing things out and being precise. Well, that's your sort of pastry chef route. Whereas I was more cook by look and by taste, and yeah, rather than sort of, yeah, standing there with some weighing scales. But
Sure.
no, I did. I love cooking at home.
Yeah. So look, let me ask you the alternative question, because it's really important that we cover all aspects of the role so people can decide if this is the right one for them. So Lee Pritchard, what are the more challenging aspects of being a chef that you think it's important that young people are aware of?
I mean, some of the more challenging, obviously, it's unsociable. You know, it's something you've got to understand. You know, we reflect on the World Cup again. The likelihood is, you know, most chefs will be working at times when England are playing football or any other nation that you're kind of following. You know, there are those unsociable bits. I remember France '98 when I missed England v Argentina. Kind of glad I did now, but I was working during that and the restaurant in the hotel was busy. You know, so you always got to be aware of that, your Christmas, your Mother's Days and stuff. Also, can be very, very long hours. You know, the industry's moved on a lot from, you know, when I was doing 14, 15-hour split shifts. However, I'm sure, you know, if you're working in some of the, you know, the grander hotels and stuff, those shifts still are about. And even in some of the more local pubs and stuff, you know, you're serving food from 11 o'clock in the morning to 11 o'clock in the evening, and if there aren't staff there to work those shifts, you could find yourself working through. It's hard work, but the reward that you get from seeing the customers, you know, finished cleared plates or their smiles when they're leaving, you know, that's where you get the reward from it.
Yeah, no, okay. Lee Maycock, anything that you can add to that around some of the more challenging aspects of the role?
Well, I think Lee's just touched on the sort of, if they are long hours, essentially can be long hours. That said, I think the industry has moved on somewhat, so you no longer work 7 days a week. It's probably more normal now to work 5, and you'll see some restaurants are actually offering a 4-day week, which is, they're all closing on a Monday and a Tuesday, because there are times when people don't necessarily go out to eat, so they're capitalizing on that downtime to close the restaurant, give everybody a break, have all your staff off together, and then when they all come back on a Wednesday, you're good to go for that sort of busy Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, which makes a lot of sense. I suppose the other challenges that we have, I find, is probably the supply chain. That certainly where we are with the farmers, we're trying to source as much local as we can, and understanding the seasons, understanding what's readily available. It gets a bit frustrating when you can't get what you want to get due to the weather, the climate. Things are not available on the market that you might have wanted. So there's certainly some of the challenges. Obviously, rising costs is certainly a challenge with ingredients. Yeah, there's several, but I think, like Lee said, it's the hours and probably the unsociable. It's unsociable to begin with because your original group of friends are out drinking and socializing when you're working. However, once you build up that network of new friends, they're doing what you're doing. They are working every night, every weekend, every Christmas, every holiday. So you get your downtime where they get their downtime. So it swings and roundabouts.
Yeah, sure. For my benefit more than anyone else's, could you just detail that I know there are different types of chef. You can specialize in different things. So if you could just maybe give some examples of those different specialisms. And so the other question from that is, does everyone start with the same level, or do you specialize straight away? I mean, Lee Bridgen, obviously you're teaching students at the moment. So I'll give you first crack on that question.
Yeah, thank you. So in terms of what we do and courses that we offer, and again, as Gareth said, most other local colleges too, you will offer similar courses. We've got a patisserie pathway, and we've also got what we call a kitchen larder pathway. So some learners, as Lee was alluding to earlier, like Lee, just prefer to go down that more creative kind of route in terms of, we don't really like to weigh and measure, we just like to cook and go with the taste. So that's kind of our kitchen and larder method, whereas our patisserie route is also available for those that want to specialize in that. A lot of our learners will go out just as a general junior commis chef kind of level. That's where they'll go out to, or onto an apprenticeship if that's their choice. But they'll start at a commis chef level, and then they'll find their specialist from that. Once they've done that grounding of a couple of years as a commis chef, they might turn around and say, look, I've got this level 3 pastry qualification. I want to start specialising in pastry if the organisation they work for offers a pastry section. Not all kitchens have that now. And then they'll progress up from there. So after a commis chef, you'll be looking at a demi chef de partie. So just to briefly explain what that is, that's someone that would run a section. So it could be the sauce section, fish section, veg section, larder, in the absence of the chef de partie, who tends to manage a section within the kitchen organisation. I can hand over to Lee. Lee can pick up from the chef de partie, I think.
It's interesting that you're absolutely right. That's how, in the sort of bigger establishments, you go in as maybe a second commis, then a first commis. So you even work your way up through those lower levels of commis chefs, and then you go the demi chef, chef de partie, and then depending on the size of the establishment, you could get junior sous, and then executive sous, and then you move into the realms of head chef, exec chef. And even, and it even doesn't stop there. Like Lee alluded to with, you either go down the sort of pastry route, but then chefs go into development, which is a huge growth area. Chefs go off and do photography. Chefs can go, you can either go down the sort of fine dining route. There's, and with that, there's also another huge, well, it was a big growth there. It's actually slowing down somewhat, but that sort of molecular cookery as well. That's actually come full circle, I believe, is that we lost probably the art of sort of traditional cooking like Lee said, with the sort of the slow cooking, the lesser cuts of meats that we didn't, buy. And then we moved into that sort of molecular, where we were vac packing everything and poaching everything and slow cooking in water baths. But now it's nice to see, the traditional coming back with understanding how to fry a piece of meat in a frying pan, or how to roast a piece of meat in the oven, or how to cook a piece of fish properly. Because I think it's very, very important that you understand that before you possibly move on to the molecular, and understand that world, which is vast.
Sure.
And just on that, in education, that is how we teach you. It is what we would call abrasive cooking, so learning to fry in a pan, braising in a pan, stewing in a pan. We don't use the water baths. There are some areas that need it, but generally it is the old traditional way of cooking that we do teach you, and that's the same across most colleges as well, because that's what the qualification asks us to do.
Sure. Okay. Well, that's a really good segue actually into the next couple of questions I wanted to ask you, which is, well, how do you actually get into this industry? So I said either of you can take this on, so if you want to jump first, but are there any subjects you can take? I mean, schools will probably offer, or most schools will offer maybe a food and nutrition course, maybe GCSE, perhaps even A-level if you don't want to go on to college. Are there any subjects that you would recommend that everyone take?
I mean, that's helpful if they do the food and nutrition. I mean, for me and for anyone coming into college, it's the English and maths that are really, really vital, because it gives them that opportunity to start a level 2 qualification. So if you can get onto a level 2 qualification, potentially it gives you 2 years at level 3, where we can really hone in on the core skills that you need to move into employment. So when we're interviewing onto the courses, we're looking at your English and maths, and then, like I say, if you've got the food and nutrition, it's desirable but not essential. But we do ask that you've got some kind of keen interest. We've run a program here at the college called Junior Chefs Academy. We've just reintroduced that again now, and that's the part, to have an interest in it. It's not a career which you can go into without having a keen interest in.
Sure. I mean, Lee, let me ask you that question. Lee just mentioned the importance of having English and maths, and I think lots of young people want to know, well, why do I need English and maths apart from the fact the government say that you do? But at your level, so if you're cooking on a for a Hollywood set or for the England national team, why does having that understanding of English and maths help you? Why are those essential to become a chef?
Well, they're life skills, aren't they? I think, maths you'll probably use every day with, with recipes and scaling up. Possibly maths more than English, but I think, they're 2 life skills that you need. Cooking's a life skill, I think. So again, that's something that should be taught in schools and obviously colleges. But I mean, I didn't do very well at school. But I think if you can leave with a good understanding of English and maths, but then also cooking lends itself to chemistry, lends itself to science. There's lots of history involved in food. So I think, most of the core subjects, do as well as you can at school, because that's only going to help you not only in cooking, but in life generally.
Yeah, sure.
And I think we all wish we'd done better at school, don't we?
I'm sure, yeah, we definitely do. Just thinking beyond FE College for a moment, Lee Bridgen, in terms of higher education and going to university, I mean, clearly that's not a prerequisite to become a chef, but are there courses that some of your students go on to study at university? Are there good pathways if you really want to go to universities?
Yeah, I mean, currently the level 3 course that we offer do offer UCAS points for people that want to go on to university. If I'm going to be honest, we don't have that many. However, we do have T levels on the horizon. So 2 T levels are a new suite of qualifications which are going to have higher UCAS points. So the likelihood is we are going to see more students progress through catering qualifications onto university, but to start a career in hospitality and catering, I don't know many that go to university. I mean, it's when you're starting to look at the more molecular kind of cuisine that Lee was talking about, or more nutritional areas that you kind of go on to, gastronomy, things like that. They're the kind of courses that universities offer. But like I say, from our college here in HRC, I've never known anyone show any desire to go on to that. A lot of our learners are very practical based and they just want to get out into the industry.
Yeah. So, I mean, Lee Maycock, I know as an industry, you've really embraced apprenticeships. Is that a good route, you think, for someone wanting to go into the industry?
Yeah, absolutely. I know many chefs that have either gone to college or gone to the sort of straight into work and gone down the sort of practical work experience route, and I know lots that have gone down the apprenticeship route. And I wouldn't say that one's better than the other. I think it depends on the individual. You've got to sort of, use your strength and what you're best at. If you are quite academic, then yeah, carry on in education. Or if your chefs tend to be, when they're sort of, you're more creative, so probably going into an apprenticeship scheme that might actually work better for you, because it gets you into the workplace and you're learning and obviously being educated at the same time. Sure. So I wouldn't say one's better than the other.
Okay. I'd usually come on to questions that are submitted at the back end of the webinar, but this one's just come in. Lee Bridgen, you've opened up a can of worms by talking about T levels, and the very sensible question that's come in is, what are T levels? So just from a college perspective, do you just want to briefly explain the concept of them?
Okay, so T levels are another word from a technical qualifications. So they're to run equivalent to A levels. So anything like hospitality and catering, construction, hair and beauty, all these qualifications don't sit on par with A levels. And what the government have done is created a technical qualification that we can offer as a vocation that will sit on par. So if I've just done a little bit of work around the catering T level, which is going to be released next year. And in passing the 2-year course, so the 2-year course is made up of 80% taught at college, 20% on the job. It's a final exam as well. So, there's a lot of work that goes into it, and it's all been designed by the employers. And at the end of that, successful after 2 years, it's the equivalent to 3 A levels. So it's really trying to upskill the vocational learners and just trying to give a little bit more weight behind the qualifications that they're achieving. Yeah, I mean, I thought the kind of guys that we have on this webinar will be quite aware what the T levels are. It's interesting that they're not, because they are the next big thing.
They are coming. I'm looking at the registrations. I know the person that's asked that question goes to Fernhill School up in Letchworth. So right. I know that currently there's only 1 out of 100 odd schools in Hertfordshire that are offering T levels. But the 4 colleges, so including North Herts College, will start offering them possibly as soon as next September. So they are things to be aware of. If you're currently in year 11, probably it would be colleges would be your T level choices for next year. If you're a little bit younger than that, probably schools might be offering them in maybe 2, 3, 4 years.
Yeah, what we need to know is that only colleges and schools that are graded Ofsted 2 or above are able to offer the T levels as well. So you have to have a minimum grade of good with Ofsted to be able to offer them. Yeah.
So if you're currently at school, it's unlikely that your school will be offering T levels, although they may well have the right Ofsted grading. There's certain other criteria that they've got to try and meet. But it's another good reason to really look at what your local colleges offer, because they may well be able to offer a T level, and you might find that they're slightly more suitable for you than an A level. But of course, that won't be the same for everyone. Next question that I just wanted to ask, and I think both of you, I'm sure, have some good ideas about this, is what experiences can you gain kind of fairly informally to decide whether being a chef is for you? Now, so obviously you can cook for yourself or you can cook for your family at home is probably a good starting point, but anything else that you'd recommend, Lee Maycock, to start with?
Well, I think, get yourself a part-time job in a hotel or a restaurant, or any sort of food outlet. That will certainly give you a better understanding if that's the career for you, and if you to do that whilst you're still at school. It'll give you a little bit of pocket money, but it'll give you some proper on-the-job experience to see if it's the right path for you.
Yeah, and then Leah, HRC, any of your students, when they're applying to join the course, is there any experiences perhaps they've gained that you could share?
Yeah, I mean, try to recommend trying to get, when you're at school, any work experience you can possibly get through the school. You know, there's lots of pubs and restaurants local to us that will take you on for some form of work experience. We're quite fortunate to offer a junior chefs program to local schools. Obviously, you need to be local to HRC. I'm not sure whether any of the other associated colleges do offer that, but it's worth looking on the college website. If they run any 14 to 16 programs as well, you know, speak to the school. We do get some schools that will buy a block session of 2 hours a week through the college term to come in and do that. So yeah, you may not be aware of that. But yeah, any work experience is great, you know, and to say, you know, cooking from home and working with someone when you're cooking home, not just going off and doing it on your own, but, you know, someone that might have a little bit of experience of cooking. Yeah, even if it's just cooking at home, you can gain so much from someone else being there.
Sure, I know from my very, very rudimentary cooking skills, which rarely extend beyond putting toast in the toaster or bread in the toaster. But even peeling potatoes, there's an art to that, and you can get better at doing it. So even if you're not going to prepare the family meal, you can probably help out with someone. There's always little tasks that need to be done. Other questions. What's the minimum age you can work at within the industry? I mean, I imagine this is the same as point you get your national insurance, so it's 16 presumably.
I think so, yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's quite difficult. You know, you can't just go and get part-time jobs like you used to. You know, it can be useful. No, you know, sometimes it's not what you know, it's who you know. You know, someone might kind of, you know, just let you slip through the back door. But yeah, a lot of our students say, well, we can't get any part-time work till we're 16, which is a shame because, you know, I started much younger, as I'm sure Lee probably did.
Yeah.
Yeah, times have changed somewhat, haven't they?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, are there any tips? Are there any kind of easy wins or things that you would recommend people do in their home kitchen? What sort of things are fairly straightforward to do?
I mean, for me, you know, find a good recipe, you know, a good book. You know, if you're learning to cook at home, you know, one of the, you know, a chef that you like their style of cooking. You know, if I give an example of someone I like to follow, Tom Kerridge, I quite like his hearty, robust cooking. You know, find someone, follow the instructions. You know, you're starting to learn to follow recipes, as Lee was saying earlier about using your maths and your English. You know, you might be cutting a recipe in half or doubling up if you've got more people coming around. Yeah, just find something that really, or someone that interests you to, you know, to read about and help you with your cooking.
Yeah.
And it's everywhere now, isn't it? You've only got to open a newspaper, a magazine, turn on the telly. It's cooking is everywhere, or food is everywhere, which is fantastic if you're looking for inspiration.
Yeah.
The other thing to do, you know, even the simple things like making an omelette, you know, practice that, because I know chefs now that still can't make a very good omelette. So, you know, you nail that when you're a teenager, you'd be onto something good.
And that's something we assess you on. That is one of the assessments in the VRQ qualification that we offer. Yeah, to make an omelette in 15 minutes.
Sure. Any tips that you guys can give me about how I crack the egg without the shell going into the bowl would be fantastic. But I'll pick that up with you. I'll pick that up with you later. Before we come on to the questions that have been submitted, I just really want you to be able to reassure everyone that this is an industry that there's going to be constant demand for. And actually, if you are 15, 16 years old at the moment, that there's going to be a need for you as a chef in a few years' time. So I've just addressed it from a Hertfordshire perspective, first of all, where you're both located. Is there lots of need for chefs at the moment? Are there any particular areas or specialisms that you know are in high demand?
I think chefs generally are in demand. I think Brexit was probably the start where we potentially lost a third of our workforce, not just chefs, but front of house and back of house. So that was obviously a massive impact. And I think closely followed by COVID, when lots of chefs and individuals in the industry couldn't work in hotels and restaurants because they were essentially closed, looked for other employment. So whether they went into, you know, delivering working for, driving roles, and then consequently never came back into the industry. So, yeah, to answer the question, yeah, the industry is very, very short of not just skill, but generally, individuals that want a career in hospitality. But to answer the question, sorry, yes, there's always going to be a need going forward, whether that's in hotels, restaurants, airlines, film, football. There's always going to be a demand.
Yeah, I get regular contacts from local businesses, where they're looking for chefs. I quite often get them this time of year. The chefs aren't necessarily ready to go out. They still need a little bit of training. So, the demand for chefs, as Lee said, is there. And the industry as itself, well, I follow quite a lot of the local businesses just to see how they're getting on against the college restaurant. And, quite often they're showing, I only got a couple of tables left here, a couple of tables left there. So people are going out to eat, that the industry isn't shutting down like, some people believed it might do due to, the cost of living, the cost of ingredients and stuff. So, yeah, and I think that, we think about contract catering. When I used to work up in London, a lot of those staff members haven't gone back to the office. I think in good time they will start to go back, and I think those kind of businesses like large corporate banks, insurance brokers, places like that, again, they'll start to grow, and there'll be a need for us to supply, or the catering industry to supply food to the workers. So I think it will take a few years, but I think it will eventually start to get back to the kind of levels we were post Brexit and COVID.
Sure, and of course in Hertfordshire there's plenty of opportunities, but of course being right on the doorstep of London as well, if you're prepared to jump on the train and commute in, then that opens up your opportunities.
Yeah, I mean, and the commuter link is so much better now. It's so easier, so much easier to get into London. Just to get into Liverpool Street, the London Underground or Overground from Cheshunt is pretty straightforward, or just a straight line in. So, yeah, I think it's going to need a little bit more time. We're going to need to come through the current crisis with the cost of foods and stuff, but I do think it will start to get back to where it was. I hope it does, because if it doesn't, it will be a grand shame.
Yeah, no, of course we don't want to lose anyone from the industry, but the pair of you, I suppose, are good examples of people who were chefs, and that was what you did on day to day. You're both in teaching and training now. What other subsequent career routes might a chef go into?
It's like we said, once you're in the industry, there's lots of different tangents, development work, which is probably a newer role that never used to be that well known years ago, but, developing for various different companies, whether it's, product or recipes or dishes. Photography is another avenue that you can go down, food photography. Creating those images that end up in sort of magazines and newspapers and on recipe sort of databases. There's lots of alternative, still culinary, but alternative careers that you can pursue.
Private chef, your own street food stall, lots of things that are available.
Yeah, and I think if we speak about Hertfordshire, but if you want to travel, private chefs in villas and yachts and ski chalets, the world's your oyster.
Yeah, so there we go. So look, it's a great career, there's plenty of demand for it, and there's so many different opportunities once you're in it to branch out. Okay, well look, I want to now start asking some more of the questions that have been submitted by our audience. If you have still got some questions that you want to ask, please do submit them. We've got a bit of time left that we can get those in. So the first question that came in quite early on: what is the hardest thing to learn or do while in the kitchen?
For me, the thing that I struggled with was patisserie pastry. I didn't have the patience, and I had really warm hands. So, rolling out pastry, aligning pastry plans and tins was always something that I really struggled with. But a lot of it was down to myself with a lack of patience. But it's that element, like Lee said earlier, where you need to be quite precise. You can't rush those kinds of jobs. On the flip side, I love dealing with pieces like meat, so deboning meat or filleting a fish and things like that, where you still need to be quite precise in what you're doing, but I just find it more enjoyable. So yeah, it's pastry for me was, didn't enjoy it.
Okay, and other Lee?
I think one of the key areas I think is time management. You've got to be good at time management, I think, when you come into this industry, because you're juggling so many things, whether it's people or jobs or or even down to key tasks in a day. But yeah, time management, which will you need that when delivering a banquet or an event. Everything down to getting the orders in a few days before, getting the prep done the day before, cooking on the day, delivery. Yeah, time management is key, I think.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Interesting aspects of the role that perhaps people don't necessarily consider. I know the best way of trying to learn that is trying to cook a roast dinner, isn't it? Because that's all about timings and critical path analysis. Okay. This question, well, this is for you, Lee Maycock. What was your favourite George Lucas film to cater for?
Wow. Well, obviously, I worked on Star Wars with George, and I think the best thing about that role was I was a bit younger and was the travelling. We did 31 countries in 5 years, which was for a youngster that was great to get around the world, see so much culturally, and obviously the different food styles. Although you're still working and being paid to travel is very good, very good. But I don't think I had one specific film that I really enjoyed. I think you're more, you're into doing what you do, so you're cooking for the actors. You spend more time focused on that than you actually do probably the film you're working on.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, question for both of you. So Lee, Bridget, you can start this one. What is your go-to dish? So look, if you found out that you were catering for the king or someone very important tomorrow night, what would be your dish that that you could really pull off?
Right, it's probably the dish I go to when I need to cheer my wife up. So it's seared scallops, black pudding, and texture of cauliflower, textures of cauliflower.
Okay.
That's my go-to dish. If she needs cheering up, that's what I go to.
Sure. And is that something that you've worked on over a number of years? Was that always your favourite one?
It does come from a love of cooking, preparing and cooking seafood. But it was one of the, I'd done different variations of scallops with black pudding, go with peas and go with asparagus. But, about 15 years ago when I first got with my wife, it was one of the first dishes that I cooked her, and she says it's one of the most memorable things. So it's kind of stuck with me outside of my career. But it's one of those things that I kind of picked up, developed the dish by seeing different ways that the dish has been cooked by other people. So, and that's where you kind of, added in new different bits to it. So that's kind of where it comes from, though.
Sure. And then for Lee, your go-to dish?
That's a really difficult question, I think, because I'm quite old school and I quite like to have really good ingredients and concentrate on the seasoning and the cooking and the execution. And it's something that sort of certainly we try and do in the school is teaching people the sort of fundamentals about having the right salt, the right pepper, the right oil, the right pan, the right equipment, the right ingredients. The cooking bit's easy. It's having all those components. I'm obviously avoiding your question, but when I first started, I spent many years at the Ritz Hotel running the fish section. So I worked on a fish stall when I was very young. So I do love fish and seafood, preparing it and cooking it. But more later in life, I got into game in a big way. So I love anything sort of pheasant, partridge, rabbit, pigeon, venison, anything that's sort of game related. Also very, very keen. But to nail one dish, I couldn't do it. There's so much out there, so much.
Okay. Next question, which I think both of you can answer. If I have food allergies, does this mean that I won't be able to be a chef?
No, no. And to be fair, the industry is calling out for people that have an understanding of food allergies. I mean, in my household, I've got someone that's gluten and dairy intolerant, so we have to be very, very conscious of what we're cooking and cross-contamination. Yeah, and I think the industry is going to be filled with more and more chefs that have allergies. You know, the nut one's been a big one for many, many years. But no, it would never stop you from going into the industry. It just means that the people you work with just need to be a little bit more conscious of who's around them.
And I mean, that is a huge growth there with not just allergies, but intolerances, lifestyle choices, cultural diets, restrictive diets. It's a minefield, and it's going to grow. I think they'll keep adding to these list of allergies as time goes on, as more people have various reactions to certain things and the trigger points. But yeah, that's a minefield.
Sure. Okay. Next question: how old do you have to be to work in the kitchen? We think 16, don't we? We think it's just sort of standard.
Yeah, we won't take anybody on at the hotel under 16, unfortunately. Gone are the days. I mean, I think I was probably 13 or 14 when I first started to go to work, but that was obviously a long time ago. But now I think today it is 16.
And there can be a restriction on some of the equipment you can use in kitchens if you're under the age of 18 as well, unsupervised. So there will be some things you can't do.
Sure. Lovely question here. I'm very interested to get your expert opinions on this one, because this is one that, that many people want to know the answer to. Does pineapple belong on a pizza?
No.
Not for me. No.
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 What could you combine pineapple with on a savoury dish? Is it a complete no-no for you two, or?
Not complete no. You can, if you've got a nice piece of chicken, and then you're going to spice up with some jerk seasoning, do like a pineapple salsa to go away, to go with it, to add a bit of freshness to it, maybe. In the form of a salsa to accompany a bit of spicy meat, maybe. But I can't think of much else for savoury.
Okay, so look, fundamentally, why doesn't it work on a pizza?
Well, I think if you like that sort of savoury and sweet mix, it obviously works for those. It doesn't work for me. I've really struggled with putting sweet things into savoury. Best thing to do with a pineapple is to grate fresh lime over it, and I think that just takes it to another level. But that's obviously sweet and sweet, but it makes a pineapple from good to really, really good.
There you go. Look, it's an important question. I'm glad that you both covered that so extensively. Lee Maycock, question, I assume this one is for you. When you were working with the England football team, how did you stay up with trends in medical and nutritional science? Because, I mean, I'm guessing even between those two World Cups that science had probably moved on, and what was right for players to eat had advanced and moved.
Yeah, absolutely. So with the South Africa World Cup, we worked with the club doctor and 2 nutritionists whilst in prior to going to South Africa, because obviously we had to develop the menus, submit the menus, have them signed off before we left. And just to prove how much time's changed, so 4 years later, when we went to Brazil, still working with the club doctor, but we then had 5 nutritionists we had to work with that all brought something different to the table. So yeah, it does evolve and change, but also each and every player has their own individual needs, and I think that changes depending on what club they're from, also, and obviously the food intake that's readily available at one club could be very different to another club. I'm not going to name which clubs are more difficult than others, but you've obviously got to take on board the individual needs. We didn't cook for them individually. We created like grazing stations, because they were loading up so many calories a day over 6 meals. They didn't have individuals. They ate as a team, but everybody did, the whole squad.
Yeah. So I mean that the cooking must be the easy part then. It's all the negotiations and the discussions that you need to have. And,
yeah.
Yeah.
To be fair, the cooking is the easy bit. It's because you're traveling, you're moving a lot. We you know, on both big tournaments, you're probably moving hotels 3, 4, 5 times. When we was in Brazil, you know, we went from Rio up to Manaus in the Amazon basin. Yeah, you're Sao Paulo. We did lots of traveling, lots and lots of traveling. And you always have a pre-tournament, so before you go somewhere. So prior to South Africa, we spent 10 days in Austria acclimatizing, and then prior to Brazil, we did Miami. So you always do a pre-tournament trip before you actually go away as well.
Yeah. So the so the chef team with the England squad out in Qatar at the moment, they will have their work cut out for them, won't they? They will be having lots of conversations. Yeah.
And it's when you're away as well, you're working with the supply chains in that area. I think the guys that did Russia would have also been challenged, because I've worked in Russia a few times, and it's probably one of the hardest countries to source products, or the right products. Yeah, so it's an interesting country to work in.
Yeah, no, we'll probably do a webinar completely on your experiences working with the England national team at World Cups, Lee. That's fascinating. Another question, so this one for Lee Brigden. When is the enrolment deadline? So I assume that's for your courses.
I mean, we don't really have an enrolment deadline. What we do advise is that, you know, you apply as soon as possible so you can get interviewed. The earlier you know that you've got, you know, a place offered at the college, the better for you. You know, we're never saying, you know, if you're someone that lives between colleges, that you've got to come to us. But having that knowledge that you've got a place secured at college, you know, makes going into your exams a lot less stressful. So, you know, attend any open evenings. I advise you to do that. We've got one at HRC coming up on the 8th of October. You know, whatever courses you're interested in, come and speak to the teams. And, you know, at the open events, and I can only speak for our own one, is you can apply on the night if you want to, and then you'd be interviewed within a few weeks. But the sooner you do it, the better. You don't want that stress on you coming into exam time.
No, absolutely. So I've just put up on the screen at the moment, those are all 4 of the FE colleges within Hertfordshire, and the QR code to the right of each of them will take you straight through to their website. So therefore you can have a look at when they have open days, and secondly, you can read up a little bit more about the courses they offer within this field. I mean, I should also say that lots of you that are at school at the moment, your schools may well have courses that they offer in sixth form that you could stay on for as well. So I'm not in any way dismissing those. They will be equally valid and, you know, well taught. But definitely have a look at the colleges, particularly if that's something that you're not already aware of. Just before we close, let me come to you first of all. Are there any books, webinars, websites, podcasts that you'd recommend anyone listen to or watch?
Well, personally, I use the Caterer, because it obviously used to be a magazine when I was much younger, but now it's all online. So I read that without fail every week. Look on their website on a regular basis. Staff Canteen's another good website for sort of up to date what chefs are doing, you know, where they're moving to, what they've done, recipes. Great British Chefs, another great website for, you know, recipes. Yeah, or just follow the individuals. I think, you know, I like to watch James. If I get a Saturday or Sunday weekend off, I like to watch James Martin. I think he's he's an interesting character to watch, and his website's very, very good. Again, with, you know, ideas and recipes. As far as books, I mean, I dread to think how many books I've bought over the years. I've got hundreds and hundreds at home. But I suppose it's, you know, it's down to, you know, what individuals you like. Like Lee said, he likes Tom Kerridge. I like James Martin. Everyone's different. Everyone's got their favourites. But a good book also to read, I think, is Anthony Bourdain's books. They're really good. Bit controversial, but very, very good.
Okay. Lee Bridgen, anything that you'd add to that list?
Not really, Gareth, to be honest with you. I mean, in terms of another website, if you're looking for recipes and like Lee said, individuals, the BBC Good Food, that's a good website to go into. If you're looking for specific recipes, I mean, I don't mind James Martin myself on a Saturday morning, to be fair. So yeah. Other than that, no, I think the staff canteen only developed about 10 years ago, but it's really grown. You can get an app for the staff canteen as well, so you can go in and look at what's going on, and they get a lot of current chefs doing blogs on there. And obviously the caterer, I mean, it was through that magazine I got my job up in London. The job was advertised within the magazine. I used to pick up and read it on the bus. So yeah, I can't think of any more other than BBC Good Food that I can add to that, really.
Yeah. Okay. And I mean, do we think, is the age of the celebrity chef helpful for the industry, or do you think sometimes it creates the wrong impression?
It has its ups and downs. From my perspective, I think what it has done is it's brought more food onto the TVs. And I think I quite like the MasterChef professional setup, and the way that it challenges chefs to really push themselves. I wasn't a big fan of when we had the celebrity chef culture, the Ainsley Harriott, Jamie Oliver kind of gimmicks behind cookery. Yes, some of the points they made were important, and they were valid, but it took away from the real essence of cooking. And I think the likes of James Martin, Tom Carriage when he does one, have kind of brought that back. It's the word celebrity I don't like, because I don't think all of these chefs would necessarily see themselves as a celebrity, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, they're a chef first and foremost. Okay, look, final question. There's a few more that have come in, but we're just running out of time for them. But I think it's a really important question to ask. So, Lee Maycock, let me go to you first of all. Is culinary or chef still a male-dominated industry?
I would have to say, unfortunately, yes. As much as some amazing females try to push and encourage young girls into the industry, it's even once they're in, we tend to lose them within the first 5 years, because they obviously then pursue a sort of get married, settle down, have children lifestyle. Some come back in, to be fair, after, but yeah, I would say the majority do go down that route. But there are, there's some fantastic female chefs out there, like the Angela Hartnetts of this world. She's just something else. Ruth Hanson, that's a youngster that's doing good things. April Partridge, which will be a name to watch in the next couple of years. I'm sure she'll be, huge. But no, I wish there were more girls coming in, and I wish more, young ladies would stay in as well. But
I mean,
that's just the way it is.
Yeah, just to add to that, currently this year, my intake at the college, it's roughly about 50-50. That's unusual though. There is normally, 70-30 or above male domination normally. But yeah, this year it's 50-50. Maybe the tide's beginning to turn.
Yeah, sure. Okay. Well, look, we've run out of time here. In fact, there's one more question, and we've had a very intimate conversation with Arthur, so I'm going to ask you both anyway. You can answer this in one word. What is your favourite film of all time?
Not food related, or just generally?
No, it didn't say food related. If your favourite film is food related, then so be it.
Wow. Favourite film.
This is nothing to do with Lee and his background, but it always has been. I'm going to say Star Wars. Empire Strikes Back.
Okay. Do you know what? I like The Green Mile.
Green Mile. There you go. There you go. Two answers. Look, chefs have favourite films as well. Thank you everyone for submitting your questions today. If you've watched this one live, I really hope you've enjoyed it. Hope you've taken some really good information from it, and it's going to help you with the next steps of your career. If you do have any feedback for us about how this has helped you specifically, do type it just in to the questions now, and we'll use that going forwards. On your screen at the moment, I've just reminded you of our HOP channels that you can access. Do have a look at HOP. It's got lots of information about a variety of different careers that are available to you. The QR code in the top left-hand corner will take you through to our virtual encounter site. You can see every webinar that we've run in the last 2.5 years. There's about 60 of them, including a really diverse range of different career choices. Next week, we're looking at careers in cybersecurity. We've then got one on hair and beauty. And then just before Christmas, we'll do another one looking at careers as an estate agent. So we've got a fairly eclectic mix. So there's something in there for everyone. Before I close though, let me just thank particularly our two panelists today, so to Lee and to Lee for sharing their experiences and their knowledge with you today. I'm sure you found them as informative and as inspiring as I have. So Lee, thanks so much for giving up your time this afternoon.
Absolute pleasure.
You're welcome.
Pleasure. And thank you to the rest of you. Hope you've enjoyed watching, and best of luck with your next steps of your careers.